Good, how are you?
Good. Cool.
Thanks for coming. So, the cool thing about the needle is that it can take different shots. So, before you start, it's a good idea to set up some of these shots ahead of time. So that yellow square means it's like a permanent shot. If you don't see the yellow square, there's no permanent shot saved, so you have to reset. And when you just poke around, it makes the screen. So this would be like what people are going for. But usually you don't want the small squares because it's a little lower quality. So usually you want kind of these bigger squares. So when you press and switches shots, when you press and hold, it creates a permanent shot, and when you enter that permanent shot, it stores that. So I'm going to set up one for these three guys, and one for these three, and then one for this person. And then I'm going to do one for the speaker of these three people. And then I'll do one over here for the speaker of these three people. Cool. And so now in this screen, you can touch any of the yellow squares and you can switch to this screen, and that shows all faces. And if someone were to stand up, or if this were to see that guy, if he turned and faced his camera, it would create a huge shot for him because it's just smart in his face.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so it'll create those, but those will disappear when it doesn't recognize the face anymore. So when people are asking questions and stuff, I was generally even though it was totally janky, I was going like this with the camera, spinning it around. So I don't know. So yeah, or I would just switch to the wide shot and then turn the camera around for whoever's asking. And then sometimes zoom in on him because this guy has some questions. One other thing to know about changing camera angles is if you zoom in on this guy and then he moves out of the screen, it'll only move if you go like this, you see it'll pan over, but it'll only start panning once you let go of the move. So it doesn't move as you're moving around, and it moves in a straight line. So if I move all wiggly over to this, it doesn't follow my wiggle. It does this.
Oh yes, that's great.
And it divides the moves based on how long you see. So if I go here fast, it goes really fast. But if you want a nice slow smooth zoom, you can go over there, hold it for a couple seconds, let go, and it'll take that same amount of time and not make it start slow and end fast. It'll just so you can make it go really fast, or you can make it go really slow. And same with zooms, of course. So I'll do zoom while I'm zooming, but once I go big like that, it'll take as long as I took before I let go, and then kill it. So, that's kind of the camera. It doesn't need to be plugged in, but Ian and I did a pretty good job of getting it charged up, so I'm a little worried that everything will die. So I just have it all plugged in and charging now. And then, so one other thing, this little button takes you back to your menu. In the menu, this is audio, this is brightness or whatever, it's all just on auto. But one thing we do want to change is with the audio. So right now I have their board running through this cable and in here. So to do that, to just switch to the Vivo itself. And that's a built-in mic, yeah. And it sounded better. I don't know. But, I mean, at least it didn't have the echo. So I think for tonight, we'll have to do is some people, when we're on the iPad, some people are speaking really loud, there's no audio processing, so you have to kind of write it to say, okay, please really loud, they're really quiet. Whether we're on the iPad or the Vivo. Some sound. We'll just leave it on the iPad for now. We'll go to the wide shot. This little button does the wide shot. And then yeah, when you want to switch it back to the microphone you plug in here, you just push those, and then push the microphone, and cuts it. And then this you can plug in either to this guy, it's right there. And then you can monitor the audio that comes there, or you can just plug it into my laptop and monitor the audio that's actually coming through the mic. I already am live because I was a little scared. So I'm going to now put the final broadcast at the same time. I'm not only going to there's a live session so people can click that and they'll go to what?
We're doing the live stream?
Yeah.
Is it the same place as it was last time?
Yeah, we're doing the exact same thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's running, and then I think on call for Colorado. Okay, so then one other thing. Okay, so somebody else did something, and that timestamp fits there, so people can jump to it. So if you look at, yeah, or if you already have added in here, and I'll show you like our last night's score. So this is last night's panel, and so this is like the introduction and the jump into the introduction, jump in, step bucket, one talking, hit trigger, and then audience question, as we're getting this discussion, whatever, so the idea is that you just type those things in as they happen, and record it. If you feel like it does something, because you put in a few seconds too late, just change it and say, oh, that was probably more like 11 minutes or 20 seconds. So these people's names are just here in case you need them. We can also do a complicated one. Alright, I guess you can. Or whatever happens. Why don't you just start if it's easier for you, we can do like audience question here, and then if there actually is one, you can add it here, so it gets it right when it is, and then change it to typing instead. So you'll want to keep this open, you'll want to keep that probably takes more priority than this, obviously we miss it. If we miss a timestamp, we can always add it later, but if we miss a shot, and we like leave it on here while this lady's talking, we can't really ever get that back. Yeah. And I'd say try not to go in on these super tight shots. If you do take a super tight shot like that, then just flip it out a little bit, because it looks like a shit on the mark. I'm going to plug this laptop in.
Are you going to be here to break down?
What?
Are you going to be here to break down?
No. What kind of, do you have a bag or anything? All this stuff fits in my backpack. So you can either just put it on my backpack when you ride your bike.
Yeah.
You can probably just put it on my backpack and leave it here.
That was a very reasonable thing.
I don't know what else to do.
I'm going to start really fast.
It's never too early to jump with this. If you're a journalist, it's never too early. There is a secret bathroom. Really? You got married at the press club? Yeah, when I stayed up I think you should go after somebody. Yeah, this guy's been there a couple of I'm going to have a church go tonight, because I know you all on the bus.
go find out what time they're closing, so I can maybe just come back and get everything
It's
out.
11.
11?
Well, that's what I read online, but you might want to find out just in case. But I think it's 11.
Get a big fly swatter, just takes it out of the way. How many total? Literally very
You're fine. So, one thing I could grab from that room is an extension for this, so that you could just have this on your lap. It's kind of hard to be dealing with both those things. Whatever you think. The laptop could either be behind it or on the chair next to you. Yeah, that's probably best. The board's on yet. There's one bad thing about this tripod thing. It won't, tilt in here, so it doesn't. The feet won't do anything other than do what they're doing. You know, like they can't. With the feet, it can't. These things all still work fine. But and so yeah, I think when you're trying to get it back here, just eyeball the side chairs. And just make sure both those third chairs are in this job. That's perfect. Yeah. And your yellow square is pretty much centered on the podium. So I think those should be all the things you need. And last night, sometimes those the panelists stayed seated, and sometimes they stood. So you could just use this if they're seated, and this if they stand. Because it's up to you.
This is great.
Yeah, no, I will.
See you.
Okay, so they've turned on the other, they've turned on the other,
I wanted to wear a rock belt. I should have done it. Hold on. I've been drinking since noon.
Did you go to Boulder?
No. It's all good. Hey, I'm Jamie. I'm DJ Snarklet.
All right, well, let's start slashing into your again.
Maybe I'll look at the live.
What time?
I did.
Check. Anything can happen now. Most people then.
check. Check.
On Tuesday, when that microphone would hear me, I was shutting it off because I figured that there was probably a lot of echo. Yeah.
This mic.
So, if we shut it off, would that help? Okay. Shut it off while we're, talking.
They do. I mean, that also potentially complicates things.
Nice to see you. I saw you up at the bar.
I was trying to think.
Is it working? Yeah.
My husband was watching it afterward, and he was like, "Yeah, you know."
Are you here on Tuesday as well?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I know you get sponsored, but I know.
Anyway,
It's like a different vibe. It was a bit different vibe. Hi.
Yeah. In what way?
I thought that it was like really tense on Tuesday.
Yeah, it was really tense.
tense.
Then we're going to do the acoustic version.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Maybe people got some stuff out Tuesday that now we can, talk about slightly different approaches. I don't know.
I think part of the frustration is that people have such disparate levels of understanding about what's going on that we're talking to a lot of different kinds of people.
is Mike going to introduce us this time?
Mike has introduced us this time. That was one of my many mistakes, but I wanted to hurriedly get to the crowd. You're the real stars.
This is
Right?
our way of being boss.
No. Pardon? Wait, yours has to
Thanks, you
All right, we have to stand together against the bullshit that's coming from that side of the room.
Hi, everyone. Hi, and welcome to the Denver Press Club, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. My name is Susan Green. I'm the editor of the Colorado Independent. Oh, you can't hear me. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, well, hi. My name is Susan Green. I'm the editor of the Colorado Independent. We are one of 3 sponsors of the evening tonight, along with the Denver Press Club, the oldest press club in the country. Yay. And Colorado Media Alliance, which is a consortium of nonprofit news organizations and others who care about news, trying to start a conversation about news ownership and media literacy and other issues around media in Colorado, which we'll be talking about tonight, obviously. I think I'm going to keep it kind of short tonight. I'm just going to say really quickly, when we organized this, we thought it would be a small gathering at the press club. The tickets sold. I'm sorry, I used that term very loosely. They didn't sell. They went for free very quickly. And so we organized this night for all the people who were on the waiting list and those of you who wanted to come. And I will say, we were just talking, the energy in the room was quite thick the other night. This is a tough topic that's very emotional to lots of people. So again, thank you for being here. I'm going to go downstairs where it's cool and watch it live streamed. So I'm going to introduce my colleague, Mike Litwin, who's moderating tonight, who will introduce our panel. Thanks for being here.
Susan Green, my boss, which means I have to say, wow, what a wonderful job she did introducing me. Did you hear that, Susan? Thank you. So we did this thing Tuesday night, and it was, I thought, tremendous, and I'm expecting the same tonight. And what we're trying to do, we have a panel up here, my all-star panel. Is it my panel? Can I say my panel?
Absolutely.
Okay, my panel, and but the main thing is that we want to hear from you guys, and the point tonight is, not to say whether you like the Denver Post or don't like the Denver Post, or to say why you think journalism is great or why you think journalism is terrible. We're here tonight to try to figure out how to save the Denver Post and what this means to how the community can basically, because it can't be saved unless the community is out there figuring out a way and leading the charge to make sure that the Post is saved. And there are no easy solutions to this. There are only difficult solutions if there are any solutions. It's not clear. It's not clear if there are any solutions. I mean, the Post is now owned by, as everyone knows by now, a hedge fund company, Alden Global Capital. Please boo. Thank you. And and they are unwilling to sell the Post. They're unwilling to sell it at a reasonable price. And the people who know this kind of stuff, the people who are paid to know what is going on in this field, expect that Alden will keep the Post long enough to bleed it to death. And that's obviously unacceptable to our community. It's unacceptable to the city, to the state. There isn't a city in America that doesn't have a newspaper. And Denver, at this point in its life, is thriving more than it ever has. It's, we're the hottest city in the country right now. And to think that this city, well-educated, would not have a daily newspaper, it's beyond absurd. So what we want from you guys is ideas on how to change, how to change things, how to approach which Dave Krieger here, formerly of the Denver Post, formerly of the Boulder Daily Camera, formerly of the Rocky Mountain News, formerly of so many places, and presently only here. That's the only place you can find him, is here. So he pointed out that Alden is shameless. So don't even think about the idea of somehow shaming Alden into doing the right thing. They will not do the right thing for the right reasons. We have to, the only way to force them to sell the Denver Post is to force them to sell the Denver Post. So what we're doing is looking for ideas on how to do that. And I'm going to introduce the panel, which I failed to do on Tuesday night, as everyone has reminded me.
Because we're all about the byline.
I know that. So I introduced myself and figured that was plenty. So, but this time I'm going to include everybody else. And then we're going to start with Chuck Plunkett, who now on my phone, when it rings, when it's from Plunkett, it comes up superhero. So, as I say, I knew Plunkett when he was a nobody. I didn't know anything, just get on the phone. Now on my phone it says superhero, and it comes up. And I know it's Plunkett, so how weird is that? So, we're going to start with Plunkett, and then we're going to start with Dave Krieger, who is just as much a hero, but not getting nearly as much credit as Plunkett, so we'll give him credit tonight. And he did the same thing at the Boulder Daily Camera, basically tried to, and they fired him for it. And here's, so let me, they'll talk first, then we'll throw it out to you guys, and then I want it to be as town hallish as possible. So I think maybe the best thing to do is for everyone to introduce him or herself, and just say briefly who you are, and we'll go from there.
You want me to start?
Go ahead.
Mike?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Shapley. I left the Denver Post in December as managing editor in the more previous round of budget-cutting staff reductions. But obviously, there's a lot of, I know everybody who's still there, and just wanted to be here to fight for them.
I'm Chuck Plunkett. I used to be the editorial page editor of the Denver Post, which is a job I wanted to have very badly. And I thank Mike Litwin for calling me a superhero in a column, because I always thought that Mike Litwin just thought I was a stupid little son of a bitch.
I think that of most people, so.
My name is John Wenzel. I'm an arts and entertainment reporter for the Denver Post, and this fall I will have been there 18 years, or my entire adult career. So.
And John just wrote a piece for The Atlantic, which everybody should read, and that's a pretty good way to go out anyway. That's what it comes to.
We'll see.
I'm Patty Calhoun, the editor of Westward, the paper I founded 40 years ago. Which we founded as an alternative to two very robust dailies, and if there's what the hell are we an alternative to?
I'm Dave Krieger, and as Mike Litwin so generously pointed out, I've been shown the door by every single
Hi, I'm Kyle Clark from 9 News. Apologies, I'm late. I just got off the air like 5 minutes ago. I have never worked at the Denver Post, but I assume I was invited because I made the questionable decision to use 9 News airtime to ask people to subscribe to our competitor.
So, Chuck, you're going to lead it off. He's our lead-off hitter.
All right, here we go. So, I'm not going to repeat exactly what I did, what I said last on Tuesday, but there are some fundamentals that are worth repeating. And sadly, to begin with, the Denver Post is in peril. It is in serious peril. And I'm so gratified and honored to see so many people this week coming out to try to figure out how they can do things to try to help save the Denver Post. As Mike said, unfortunately, there's nuance. And everybody hates nuance because nuance is hard to figure out. But that's the situation that we're in. And what I want to do tonight to get us started is give you a couple of ideas that I've thought about and where I come down on the ideas. It's not just ideas that I've thought about that have bubbled up from, from the smartest people in Colorado. And I've thought about those and I want to let you know where I weigh in on those things. But the principles that I have, and these are the principles that I tried to use as a guiding light when we did our package of editorials on April 6th online, and then it ran in print on April 8th, which I refer to as the News Matters perspective, is we need to take the moral high road in every situation. We need to show that we are good journalists, and we are following good journalism ethics, and that should be trusted, and that should be honored, and that should be what's put up on a pedestal. That's my first and foremost thing. So we don't want to do something that besmirches the reputation of our profession. And then second, I don't want to do harm. I don't want to do harm to the patient here. I don't want to be the guy that tries to shoots the hijacker and ends up hitting like the pilot, right? We have to protect the people that are working at the Denver Post, and we have to think about that very hard. So whatever we come up with has to keep that in mind. That's not just the newsroom, that's the pressmen, that's the advertising people, that's the circulation people. When you think about the great American, it's not an American invention, but it's become an American invention. It's central to our way of life and central to our democracy. When you think about the importance of our profession to democracy, you want to protect that whole experiment that makes a newspaper happen, all the way down to those guys and girls who don't always get the paper to your doorstep in time. And so now the ideas. I've got three, or I've had three big ones, or at least they're supposed to be big. The first is this notion of a subscriber boycott. And I get that. Everybody's mad as hell, and they want to do something. My wife and I got our subscription renewal notification in the mail just the other day, and now that I no longer work there, we actually had the conversation for the first time ever. Well, what do we think? I understand wanting to burn things down. I understand wanting to throw rocks at the hedge fund guys and hitting them where it hurts in their pocketbook. But I view supporting local journalism as a sacred thing. If you support civic literacy, you have to subscribe to some kind of local journalistic outlet. And for my money, I don't want to quit reading the Denver Post. There are too many people that aren't just my friends, but are people that are colleagues of mine that I depend on for accurate information. And I just think a subscription boycott is a very, very dangerous thing. For one thing, it's easy to convince people to stop doing something. It's much harder to get them to come back around. I understand that there are free market arguments here in play. And when I first started writing about subscribing 20 months or so ago, I acknowledged that. I said, if the Denver Post isn't your game, if you want to subscribe to another local outlet or several other local outlets, that makes sense to me. But I just want you to remember, the Denver Post isn't really playing on a level playing field. They are being taken advantage of by a cynical owner that isn't investing in them to the level to which they should, so you're not seeing the Denver Post playing at the best of its game. The second idea is an advertising boycott. There I see more potential, and it's based in history. In the 1990s, the Guild, which is the union that represents the Denver Post employees, aggressively pursued advertising boycotts a couple times. My former board member and mentor, William Dean Singleton, who used to own the Denver Post, does not like to lose. He also doesn't like to get beaten when he wants to keep money in his pocket. But those advertising boycotts worked, and the Guild got what it wanted, and ultimately employees got paid a little bit more. I think you have a real possibility here to hit Alden Global Capital where it hurts. You pull out the 25 biggest advertisers in the paper, and then you use the Guild's muscle and its clout across the entire newspaper chain that Alden has, from coast to coast, and you do that paper after paper after paper, or at least the biggest ones, and that's how you hurt Alden. Okay, so what about the advertisers? Won't they not want to come back later? Well, they need to keep advertising. So they want to keep supporting the local paper. Tell them right now, take the money that you'd set aside to put into ads, put it into some kind of account that earns a little interest. When we win this fight, praise the new ownership, the new management structure, lavishly with ads. It's your civic duty. You're doing it because you care about Denver. You're doing it because you care about Colorado. You're doing it because you care about San Jose and St. Paul and Boston, all the way across the country. That, I think, would get their attention. The third idea, and Tuesday night we mainly focused on that from a perspective of forcing Alden to sell. There were a lot of convincing arguments that Alden's not really interested in doing that. There's a subtler way to think about that. I want to throw it out there. What if you said that the advertising boycott was tied to reform? Right now, we're at less than 70 journalists in the Denver Post newsroom. I believe we need to be more at 150. A lot of the people that you talk to at the Denver Post believe 150 is the right number. What if you said, okay, we want to get back to 130, and then we'll advertise with you again? It's something to think about. I know it's tricky. Alden never wants to talk. That's going to make negotiation hard. But if you want to try to be a little bit more friendly about the whole thing, that's another idea. The third idea was a big community protest. Try to get hundreds, if not thousands, of people from all walks of life and all over the state of Colorado to come to Civic Center, right outside what I now call the Digital First Media Building and no longer the Denver Post Building, since there aren't any Denver Post people in there anymore, and just say, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore, and get the governor to come and invite the senators and the congressional delegation, the city council, and et cetera, and raise hell. To be honest, after Tuesday night, I felt less interested in that plan, but if you guys think it's a good one, I think it's one you should consider. I've said a lot. I'm happy to, obviously I'm here to answer any more, but I'm sitting down, but please do no harm.
Now that Dave Krieger attempted to write
He did not attempt to write.
He did write. He did write. He wrote. He attempted to publish, I should say. He did write a column about this same situation. Alden, of course, owns the Daily Camera as well, and they stopped him from publishing it. He self-published it, and they somehow took offense at that, and he ended up being fired. And so he's here tonight.
Thank you. I come at this a little differently than Chuck does, although what we wrote was very similar, because my piece came out of an innocuous correspondence from a senior citizen in Boulder who wrote to me. He's objected to any number of editorials that I wrote for the Daily Camera, so we had a previous relationship. He wrote to me and said, I just got my subscription bill. They jacked the price up again. This is a senior who lives on a fixed income. He was now being charged $412 a year for the Boulder Daily Camera, which is the size of a Kleenex. And he said, what are you guys doing? Don't you think you're putting yourselves out of business? You're pricing yourselves out of business. He was actually under the impression this was a local decision made by the people who run the Boulder Daily Camera. And that was when the light bulb went on in my head that nobody had any idea what was actually going on here. People who were very knowledgeable in Boulder about a slew of municipal issues had no clue who owned the Boulder Daily Camera or what they were doing to it. So the mission became to do our job as journalists, which is to tell the story. And this is a story that doesn't get told because it's about us and because our owners don't want it told. So when I thought about that in detail, to me, the focus on journalists, the focus on protecting the people who remain at the Denver Post is wrong. We serve the community, that's our job. We serve readers, that's our job. And what is happening now, and it's well documented by the journalism, is $1 out of every 5 that comes out of that senior citizen's pocket is going to enrich Randall D. Smith, who's buying mansions in Palm Beach, and Heath Freeman, who's extending his mansion in the Hamptons. That is income redistribution from the middle class to the 1%. That's what we are enabling. And when we encourage people to pay those rates, and we do nothing to change the ownership situation, we are abetting that income redistribution from the middle class to the 1%. We are actually hurting our readers. That's my view of it. So, to me, accepting the status quo, which is the official position right now, we are not advocating, as a union, the News Guild is not advocating, and as far as I know, no organized group is advocating a boycott of any kind at this point. We've got projections that these institutions, the Post, the Camera, the Longmont Times-Call, the Loveland Reporter-Herald, there's 12 or 15 nameplates in Prairie Mountain Media, and Fort Morgan, and Sterling, and all these towns along the Front Range, that they have between 2 and 4 years to live. And there are people who think that's a generous assessment. We know from recent reporting that Alden is taking 20% off the top operating profit and leaving, as revenues decline, which is the secular trend, leaving these institutions to figure out how to keep the lights on after they take their cut. The best analogy for that I can think of is a mob protection racket. That's what they do. They come in, they take their cut off the top, they say good luck. And so Chuck's metaphor was shooting at the hijacker and hitting the pilot. My metaphor is the Alien movie, where the alien takes over the body of a human that you really like. Let's picture it Sally Field. It's somebody you really like. And the question in
That's not even fair.
Give you that. In every B movie there's ever been, the question for the hero is always whether to shoot Sally Field, because she's now an alien and she's going to destroy the world. And the answer in virtually every movie is, I'm sorry to say, Sally Field gets shot. It's, it's what you got to do to kill the alien. That's what's happened here. These aliens have taken over these institutions. So my own personal opinion is the title is wrong. It should not be How to Save the Denver Post, because the Denver Post has been taken over by aliens and may not be savable. It should be How to Save Local Journalism. And there's lots of options there. As we know, there's all kinds of experiments going on online. There's all kinds of ideas for new experiments online. Revenue is an issue. There's lots of challenges. But we need to take a very wide look at this and say, how do we preserve local journalism even if the Denver Post cannot be saved? If the Boulder Daily Camera cannot be saved, how does Boulder save it? The reality is, in the newspaper business, a lot of newspapers have gone down. Rocky Mountain News went down, as Mike and I know from personal experience, 9 years ago. There's nameplates all over the country, famous ones, that no longer exist. So it's not a theological connection to the Denver Post per se. It is a belief in local journalism, and if we can't do that with these people owning this institution, then in my opinion we need to do it another way. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I first want to put in a word for Ghostbusters, just a stay puft guy. He's the only guy that got killed. So,
in the original Alien movie, which I watch a lot, Sigourney Weaver killed the alien.
All right, so now we're going to throw it out to you guys, so whoever wants. So, where is Corey here? Corey is here. Corey's going to get a microphone. This is Corey Hutchins for the Colorado Independent. It was his idea to have this panel, so I'm going to give him the credit. He decided he'd take the credit for the success.
Yeah, if it goes horribly awry, it was Mike's idea. Say your name.
My name is Sabra Van Dolson, and my idea may be completely, entirely, wildly naive, but I wanted to know whether anybody had thought of bringing back the Rocky Mountain News. And is there a non-compete in the sale of, I mean, when the Rocky Mountain News was sort of taken over by the Denver Post, is there a non-compete clause in there? And I was thinking that if this hedge fund owner is intractable, then it seems that people of goodwill, hopefully backed up with large amounts of money, might be able to create a parallel universe. I thought of the Rocky Mountain News just because of the brand name recognition, which I think is still fairly powerful.
Let me give you the quick answer to that. Anybody else can answer. Phil Anschutz owns the rights to the Rocky Mountain News. He has a phony website up that they sometimes put something on. So the problem is we used to have 2 newspapers. There's a reason we only have 1 now, and that's the reason that competing at that level just isn't practical. There's almost no place in America where 2 newspapers successfully compete at that level. So the question is, if the Denver Post disappears, could you resuscitate the Rocky Mountain News? You don't do it by name, but yes, that could be possible. But Phil Anschutz owns the name, so that's an issue. Yeah, no, go ahead. When the mic
is on, but okay. Well, I wasn't thinking of that idea in a kind of nice, friendly way. I was thinking of trying to pull that off at the same time leveraging the discontent that everyone in this room is feeling, that discontent that aging subscribers are feeling, to somehow galvanize that discontent. Basically walk with all of the Denver, 80% of the Denver Post reporters that are left. I mean, make it, a parallel universe that brings itself into existence with a lot of very forceful organizing and leveraging and manipulation.
Yeah, I think that's a real idea, and someone suggested that to me Tuesday night. I think it's a real idea that if you were to disappear the Denver Post and hire everyone at the Denver Post to move across the street to a new newspaper and leave Alden with nothing, then you'd think that if you could find a rich person, and this is part of the problem, if you could find a rich enough person who wanted to invest, let's say put for risk about $50 million to do this, then I actually think that could work. That you could, because there can't be competing newspapers on that level of newspapers. There can be Colorado Independent, which I hope you all support. There can be Denverite, which I hope you all support. And but 2 competing newspapers can't survive in the modern environment.
I understand that.
So, but if there were one, if everyone wanted to move across the street and leave Alden with nothing, I think that'd be a great idea.
Is 50 million what it would take?
Let's Linda address that, because she knows all about the money.
I don't know if I know about the full money, but one of the major logistics with that is the press capacity. I mean, if you're talking about printing a newspaper, there's probably 1 printing press right now that can print that many newspapers out to a subscriber base, and that's the Denver Post. And so then it becomes a case of where else does that end up getting printed. The Denver Post presses right now print the Colorado Springs Gazette. They print all of the PMP papers. They print a number of the community papers. They print Westward. So they print the New York Times. They print the Wall Street Journal, USA Today. So I mean, there's a real logistical issue also in terms of trying to bring back, and you'd have to find, there are other presses in town, but I don't think they have the capacity to do something on a major scale.
There are presses out of town too.
Right.
So how many papers?
They also print the Coloradoan. The Greeley Tribune is printed in Cheyenne.
How many papers could you print in Cheyenne? I mean, you know?
I have no idea.
Not
And
enough.
But yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think
I
it would
assume
be
not
enough.
enough.
And then you're working with deadlines and.
But Alden, isn't Alden then stuck with these presses? I mean, that's not going to make them millions of dollars.
That's true, that's true.
So they wouldn't keep them, they'd sell the presses.
Right, so.
So then somebody then you could use the presses, right? I mean, this is all comes with, I mean, for this idea to work, which I think is a great idea, I want to nominate you for something. So for this to work, it means that everybody walks across the street, wherever the hell you guys are now. Where is it? What county are you in?
60th and Washington.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Adams County.
You don't have to walk across the street. You can walk someplace downtown. You know, and everybody did that, and they were left with nothing. They wouldn't want the presses. So there would be presses to print an alternative newspaper. Let's go other people.
So what's the tab on that press?
Oh, yeah.
You know, honestly, I don't know. And that's not part of the, yeah, I was gonna say, I was in charge of the budgets in the newsroom, so I don't have any of that kind of
So
knowledge,
how many, so if you were to take the 60-some people from the Denver Post and you were to add 60-some people, what would the price tag be for the employees approximately?
I'm not sure I can say. I mean, my guess is when the newsroom was in that range, Tony, I want to say it was somewhere in the range of just personnel.
Yeah.
It was, our budget was in the neighborhood of 21 million.
And for 120, it'd be about 10 million just for salaries, then you have to throw in the logistics and travel budget. So, you know,
Right.
15 million for the newsroom.
I know, but for what length of time?
Per year.
So that was an annual. That was an annual. We had an annual budget when I started in senior management. Our annual budget was pretty widely set at that time. Was about 21 million, and it was a percentage of you know, it was I think 13% of total Denver Post you know, expenses. I want to say it was somewhere in that range.
But they saved themselves a huge when they fired me. But
what the industry average or industry estimate is of how many employees you have?
Industry average for a newsroom, or at least this is kind of the industry average as I recall, is that you're talking about probably anywhere from 10% to 12% of a news organization's expenses are what it costs to run a newsroom. The Denver Post is far beneath that now.
So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, since I have the microphone. So I'm a state legislator, and I want to say that we need you. You are the check and balance. You're also how we get our messages out, and so the two need to come together. And so yes, if you had the forum, not only senators would come, but also the legislators would come in addition. But I have two questions. One is my husband and I, at Kyle Clark's suggestion, and it's your fault, we resubscribed to the Denver Post. Should we keep that subscription? I'd like to walk out of here tonight knowing, do we keep our subscription or not? But the second thing is, all this stuff is really interesting. And I don't know who you all are and why you came here tonight, but and it's a little ironic for a politician to be advising journalists, let me just say, but I'll take this opportunity. But I think that this is all inside baseball. I mean, all this stuff about aliens and we're going to beat up the aliens and this venture fund and what they're doing to you and you know, all this conversation that you've just been having, it's inside baseball. And the general public, they don't get it. And so when the Post goes away and when the next one goes away, the general public is going to be sitting in their house going, honey, should we subscribe to the Post again? Oh, they're gone? They don't get what's happening. And so how can we have a conversation about how we can make this real to the general public so that they can feel some investment in what may be happening and do something to stop it?
Before I throw this to Kyle, because it's his fault that you resubscribed to the Denver Post, before I throw it to him, and Kyle has some really interesting points to make about that very topic, I'd like to say a couple of things. One is that for For those who were here Tuesday night, you may have noticed I didn't have my glasses, and that's because I lost my glasses. So I had to go to the mall, a place that I hate to be. And, but when I was there, I was met by 3 different people who came up to me and said, what's going on with the Denver Post? What's happening with the Denver Post? Or are you still going to have a newspaper? So none of these people knew that we were organizing, these 2 nights. This was on people's mind. They see people in the news. This is something that people talk about. So I don't think people are ignorant of the fact that the Denver Post is in peril. I do think there's a question of understanding why it's in peril and how much peril it's in. But the question, I think one of the big questions to answer tonight is if there's a community effort, and it has to be a community effort. It's not going to be led by journalists up here. It has to be a community effort. Should the effort be to save the Denver Post, or should the effort be to find an alternative to the Denver Post? And that's part of the question you have to answer, because as Dave said, the important part is journalism. You have to have journalism at that level in Denver. What is the best way to do that? So, go ahead.
Thanks for putting this on me. Well, I can tell you my story. I mean, I've read the Post since I moved here 11 years ago, and I work in an advertiser-supported medium on television, and I always thought that I was just doing my part by reading the Post online and subjecting myself to the ads and clicking when it was interesting. And never chose to subscribe at home because I get 1 newspaper a week. It's a weekend edition when I have time to read it, and that's when I read the paper. I now subscribe to a newspaper in the Post, which I have not read once since I subscribed. I still read it daily online, but I'm doing it because that was the ask, and I'm willing to pay for quality journalism, and they said, we need your help in this manner, so I was happy to do it. I have not canceled my subscription, despite the fact that they rewarded my loyalty and yours with another round of cuts. As you've heard from other folks, expecting the owners of the Post to react to anything other than dollars is foolishness, and there's a real question about whether all of the subscribers walking would make a big enough dent that we could do something. So for the time being, I have that stone in my pocket. I stand ready to throw it when ordered, but I'm not doing that now because I feel like it would disengage me in a way from the fight, and I want the people who work for the Post to know that I'm still there and I'm waiting for us to figure something out. So I'm encouraging people to keep their subscriptions. Am I going on the air on a regular basis and urging people to subscribe as I was before the most recent decimation? I'm not. Because I don't think that increasing subscriptions to the Post will save the Post. I think it'll just line Alden's pockets. I'll just make 2 other quick points while I have the microphone, and I'll pass it back down the line. I love the idea of a community groundswell, a community rally. That would be my favorite part of the movie.
More than the alien?
More than the alien. We're getting to the alien. But I fear that it would be the crushing part of the movie where the heroine turns around and realizes that there's really not that many people behind her. I said this Tuesday night, I think it is worth repeating. As somebody who regularly and routinely, like Chuck does, like Dave did in Boulder, encourages people to form a line and rush into the abyss. I just do the TV version of that. Sometimes you'll get people, most of the time you don't. I honestly don't believe that this community would rally to save anything short of the Denver Broncos. I don't. They would not rally to save 9 News. I don't think they would rally to save the majority of our pro sports teams. I think it's the Broncos or nothing. So I would hate to have us pour our time and our energy and our emotion into something that in the end is going to be futile. I subscribe to the idea of how can we save what truly matters about the Post? And the last thing I'll say is at the risk of torturing the analogy, so we've got the hijacker and the pilot, we've got the alien. Alden is the hostage taker, but there's not just one hostage. There are a ton of hostages, and they are the employees, and they are the people who work the presses. They are also community journalism, and what the Post means to this community and the work that the Post does, which could be done under another name. All of them are hostages in the room, and right now the hostage taker feels safe and happy and is offing people whenever it feels like. That to me suggests organized, quick action, and it's no longer about saving everybody, it's about saving as much of what matters as possible. And I see no signs that saving the Post itself could be part of that.
Mike, do you mind if I say something to that?
Where?
Next.
Oh, no, I was going to go to you. I want to go to the audience for a minute, then I'm going to
All
come
right.
back to you.
Okay.
All right, so, right.
After finding out that even 11,000 signatures on a petition, they wouldn't even let it come up the elevator. I said, these people are immune to public opinion. How do you land a punch on them? And when you got rich dudes, the only way I know to land a punch on them is lawyers. Is there a possibility that we can get a class action suit, whether get the ACLU or somebody to file it, on behalf of all the subscribers of the Post who are not getting their money's worth, who want and need community journalism, and they need the watchdog out there, and they're not getting the watchdogs. They expect to get a viable editorial page. They are not getting a viable local editorial page. Can we, that would be quick. That would be effective.
Are there any lawyers in the room who want to answer that question? I don't think that's possible, but there are some people who suggested that labor law might be a way to get at Alden, but that's way above my pay grade. So I was going to pass it over to John here for a minute, and who actually is the only person up here employed by Denver Post. So if Denver Post goes down, so does he. So he obviously has an interest in that. Not that he's turned off his phone, but he does have an interest. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, hello? Sorry about that. Hope you'll bring your earplugs. Yeah, I mean...
It's not alien. It's not working. Let's try this.
I think it's where he's standing in relation to this.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. Go back and stand behind Linda.
Should I just crouch in the corner? I don't know.
Is it going on?
Yeah, okay, well, I'm just going to start talking and hope it doesn't deafen everyone.
Oh, just talk. I see what's down.
Yeah.
Good God. Okay. Hi, sorry about that. Yeah, as Mike said, I'm the only person who still works, will be working at the Denver Post next week, who's on this panel tonight. I think Chuck is, yeah, hopefully. I think Chuck is technically you're employed for another day. Is that right?
I'm coming by the newsroom tomorrow to say goodbye.
Yeah, tomorrow is his last day. It's been very strange hearing people talk about your employer and you ostensibly as different metaphors, like Krieger said, someone who's been taken over by an alien. And I think, as Chuck said, I think this is a nuanced thing. And I think these metaphors are all inadequate. With respect to his hostage taker one, that's a little more added. But to answer your question, yeah, I think you should keep subscribing. And I'm not just saying that out of selfishness, because I have 2 young kids and it's their health insurance and livelihood and roof over their head and stuff. I'm saying it because if they can't be shamed, then what does it matter? And also, by the way, money is not the only thing they listen to. They are aware this is happening, and I know that. And I can't totally get into specifics, but this is getting to them. That Atlantic piece I wrote last week, less than a week ago, it was published, is getting to them. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm not saying that they can be shamed, but they're not blind and they're not deaf. And I think that this is causing problems for them, this sustained campaign that's been almost a month now, I believe.
More than a month.
More than a month. Tony Mulligan, our guild head, could probably give us more data on that. But regardless, I just wanted to say it's been very strange hearing people talk about us, and it makes me think of like end of life, right to life type stuff. Like, and I'm not making light of this story, but like Terry Schiavo, or however you pronounce her name, a few years ago, everyone was like, we know what's good for her. The Christian thing, the medical thing, whatever. Like, everyone knows what's good for the Post, and Post employees by nature, because we're journalists, have not been saying a lot, because we are not protesters, we're not activists, we're journalists. But again, with all due respect, I find it personally insulting, the ideas that Dave Krieger puts forward, because yeah, it's not just about the Post, it's not just about the employees, this is for the good of journalism. Well, if it's for the good of journalism, then why not use that same logic and say, what's good for the Post is also good for other media outlets. It's good for Denverite. Dave Burdick, my former editor. Everyone in a media capacity in this town I've worked with, or used to work with in some way. You know, Colorado Independent has a lot of former Rocky and Post people. We're all human beings. I'm not a fucking alien that has been taken over by somebody. So, sorry, pardon my French, but I'm here to tell you, killing us, killing the people who work at the Denver Post, so to speak, that's not going to solve this problem. I don't have all the answers, but it's not going to solve this problem.
I would respond to that. I would respond to that by saying that having worked at the Post, having worked at the Rocky Mountain News, having both papers taken out from under me, I think to be accused, as I have been, of somehow wanting the Post to be harmed by this, even though I'm out here leading this, I trying to find ideas on how to save the Post is insulting to me, and the idea that you think that the people in the Denver Post newsroom are somehow more important than the community who depends on the Denver Post is absurd. It's absurd to me.
I didn't say we're more important.
That is what you said.
No, it's not. I'm not saying we're, as human beings, I'm not saying we're more important than our readers. Our responsibility is to our readers. I'm saying we're as important as our readers.
You're as important as each reader. You're not as important as the community that needs journalism at its best to serve the city of Denver and the state of Colorado. Now, I feel terrible for what you're going through. I've gone through it.
Yeah, no, I know.
Chuck Puckett's gone through it.
Yep.
Dave Krieger's gone through it.
Yeah.
We've gone through it. So you're not alone. You're not a martyr. We're all in this same situation together. Right. And to accuse other people of having motives that are against you somehow personally, against the people in the newsroom personally, for people who have lived in a newsroom their entire adult lives is insulting. I think you ought to rethink that.
You might want to apologize. I'd like to hear from Patty.
Yes,
okay,
yes. I would like to. Go right ahead.
Go ahead, Patty. Realistically, we have to accept the fact that the owners are beyond shaming. They want, Alden Global wants money. They will squeeze it until probably the Post dies. That seems to be the end game. Maybe they'll sell it to the mysterious billionaire who was not in the room tonight as far as I can tell. But unless that mysterious billionaire shows up and gives an incredible amount of money to a greedy capitalist venture group that doesn't seem to have any indication they want to sell, it's not going to happen. What we have to be prepared for is support the Post and the reporters who are there now. But you have to be prepared for an alternative. And I'm not talking about can Denver sustain a daily paper? We've got to explore that. If it sustains a daily paper, who's going to advertise? Can any of you name who are the advertisers in the Post right now? Those are the people, mattresses and things that will soon disappear. You have to figure out, is there a sustainable model for any daily? And if so, start building that model, start working around it, in case any plans to save the Post don't work. But if Denver wants a daily, and I think Denver should have a daily paper, I think there are models that can work. We're not seeing them yet.
Go ahead.
Hi.
I think we're not. I think we're off the air.
I was just wondering. You said it would take about $50 million to implement your plan. I was wondering if there's any if there was any contemplation of trying to get a group of investors or consortium together to try to raise capital. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you wouldn't actually have to raise probably the whole 50 million before Alden would start to get worried, right? I'm just wondering.
Well, it's a question, and I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how hedge funders work. I talked to Tom Steyer the other day, who's trying to impeach Trump, going around the country on his tour, and he's the hedge fund guy. So I said, can you be a good guy and be a hedge fund guy? So, because it looks like you can't be. So I said, can you be? And he said, look, there are good hedge fund guys, there are bad hedge fund guys, but if you buy a business simply to kill it, and you're going to lay off person after person after person after person after person, and I'm quoting him here, he says, you're not a hedge fund owner, you're a dick. And he says, I don't know the Alden people. He said, but they're dicks. He said, I don't know any of the investors in Alden, but they're dicks. Anybody who would buy something like the Denver Post and all these newspapers that they have simply to destroy them, to destroy a public good, they're dicks. They're not simply hedge funds.
Yeah, but that's not my question.
So the question is, but the question is, you cannot to force Alden to sell at this point. It's still going to cost more money than it would to start something up. To start something up is so hard to do. It's so, I work for a startup. It's the Colorado Independent. Please, everybody read it. Send us money. We have a very small staff. We work very, very hard. The people who run the Colorado Independent work very, very hard to have enough money to keep it going every month, every 2 months, every 3 months. And it is so difficult to do. There needs to be a real money person who's interested in doing this, and no real money person is ever going to invest that kind of money without being certain he or she can make a return.
Well, that's why a group or a consortium or something of investors.
I'd love to have that. That means you need a lot of risk if we can't even get one.
Well,
this is quite to pivot on what Kyle said. If the Broncos are God and they come out for a lot of causes, could we get the Broncos to do a Save the Denver Post?
As someone who covered the Broncos for years, John Elway is not a big fan of the Broncos.
We'll go to the Broncos right after we go to Trump, and with all due respect to them, he's absolutely right. The death of the Denver Post is probably good for anybody who wants their actions to go on uncritically examined. So that is your politicians, that is your businesses, and that's the difference.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to address this gentleman's question. When I was proposing the parallel universe of the Rocky Mountain News and basically stealing the entire staff of the Denver Post in the process, I was conceptualizing that not as like a community outpouring of sympathy for the demise of journalism. I understood that to be exactly what you are talking about. That would have to be a very serious business
yes, somebody has to
enterprise.
stand up and lead that.
Right. So first, back to here's a hedge funder who's not a dickhead is George Soros. That's who I would go to. I would go to somebody like George Soros. I would go to the biggest philanthropist in places like Aspen. I would lay out exactly what my goals and objectives were. I would write a kick-ass business plan. I would treat it like a high-risk venture capital enterprise. And
the problem with high-risk capital enterprise, they're built on the possibility of everyone getting really rich, and no one's ever going to get really rich anymore running a newspaper.
Well, so you tell me why did Jeff Bezos buy is quoting the Washington Post? Why did the Japanese guy buy the Los Angeles Times? Obviously,
he needs to lobby DC. I mean, Bezos needs to lobby DC, so that's why he needs the Post. I mean, I'm sure there's some civic value there, and I think if you are looking for an owner, I mean, you're looking for somebody who values that civic engagement.
So what does the Japanese guy need to do in LA?
He wants something. I don't know him well enough to know what he wants. But I mean, there's good and bad owners all over the business. I mean, you look at the television landscape these days. Everybody wants to make their money, but some people also care about the mission. And maybe there's that percentage. I don't know that Soros or Steyer owns media.
They don't.
Yeah, I don't think either of them do media. They're very politically active, but they don't do media. Anschutz is politically active and does media.
Right.
There are good companies out there, but the question is, who wants the footprint here?
Right, but I'm saying it's an obstacle, but it's not an absolute. I mean, if you treated it like a real business, there's a possibility that you could make it happen. And there is, in some worlds, a convergence of a philanthropic mindset that meets business.
You know, I'm curious about how many people here get the print paper.
Yeah.
The New York Times. Exactly. And that's where they're
But
making money.
Say that there's not a room in Denver you could go to where you get that kind of response.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty hearty response. And we're talking about the Denver Post, but that's a small portion of what Alden owns here. They own the printing press that does everything here. They own a bunch of newspapers in rural areas and in other suburban areas like Loveland, Boulder, where I used to work, Canyon City, Fort Morgan. The Boulder newspaper has the production side of the Denver Post, of the St. Paul Pioneer Press, and all these other newspapers. That's where all the actual laying out of the newspapers is being done. And I think that to just focus on the Post, this is a business enterprise that would cost a lot of money to operate. And the concept here is too, that people I get 2 newspapers a day. I just moved to Denver from Boulder, and I get the Denver Post, and I get the New York Times in print every day. I'm an old person. People aren't reading their news like that. And, you know, one of the problems here is that the news industry refused to adapt to this whole thing in the 1990s. And to come up with a business plan, you're not going to take away this moneymaker from Alden. You're going to have to come up with a business plan that's entirely different. And it's going to have to address some different things.
And I would say, so I didn't emphasize this enough Tuesday night, but I want to emphasize it as much as I can tonight, which is that we're here to discuss ideas. We're going to have there are some good ideas out there. We don't know if any of them can work, but for this to happen, it involves community leadership. People here in Denver, here in Colorado, need to form a committee, need to find expertise where they can find it, need to be able to organize where they can organize, be able to talk to rich people, be able to talk to advertisers. There are a lot of things that areas of expertise that need to be brought together in one place, and there needs to be enough spark in this community besides outside this room that we have tonight and that we had Tuesday night for people to bring that together. And unless or until that can happen, doesn't really matter what ideas we bring up tonight, doesn't really matter what possibilities there are, because unless that happens, then nothing happens. So otherwise we're waiting for a pie in the sky rich guy to come along. A rich guy can't buy the Denver Post right now from Alden. Hopefully it can eventually, if we can do something to force that or something else happens. And for a rich guy to come and start a whole new newspaper is another pie in the sky thing. It's a very unlikely possibility. So you know, there needs to be community action to say that we're not going to stand this, but it has to be also something that can move forward to areas that I personally don't fully understand and where other people do. So
I think that we as journalists and we as members of the community need to explain to the rest of the community that doesn't subscribe to media or pay attention to media how important it is to be informed about what your local government is doing, what's happening in your neighborhood. We've done, as a journalist, we've done a shitty job of explaining why what we're doing is important.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of comments. First of all, I have done what he advocates, the gentleman from the Boulder camera. I have discontinued my subscription. I do feel like you can't serve an evil master. And I do realize that individuals are hurt, but I do feel like the evil master isn't going to get better by continuing to feed it. So I have done that. And I felt that it was the right thing to do. You're only enriching them, I feel, by continuing to subscribe. And I tell that every time they call me to resubscribe. I say, as long as this group owns it, I will not subscribe. I don't know, though, there's so many facts that you don't know about the Alden Group. Do they hold on to it because of its losses? Does it make them any money? Yes. I mean, it makes
them a great deal of money.
It makes them a great deal right now.
19% profit here in Colorado.
Okay, but
they made $28 million off the Post in profit last year.
Okay, so they continue to make a profit. Well, I know they. Okay, so they're not keeping it as a loss in their portfolio or something. Okay, but there's so many facts that the rest of us. You encourage the public to lead it. But there's so many important facts that we have no idea about a right path. This woman said all kinds of things about the uses of the press and how it is so important to other papers and things. I don't think the public can effectively lead anything without people who've worked there, know the business model, and that means all of you. I think you have to be a part of a movement, and because there's just so many things where if the public just says, oh, save the Post, it may have all these other factors that no one knows. So without expertise, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I also think about the legal options through the unions. My son is a investigative reporter in the East, part of a very strong union, and he had told me that the Denver Post is the 10th largest market in the U.S., remembering him correctly. It just seems unbelievable that a market of that size can't bring to bear pressure on somebody. So the other question I have is, who are these principals? Who are the people? It would be interesting to know the names of the individuals so that you could shame people individually. I think that would get a lot better response to shame individuals than Alden Press, where people can hide behind it. I do know one of the people is a 2005, I think, graduate of Duke University, the same year my son graduated from there. And I think naming individuals might be effective.
And John talked about this because he just wrote a piece in the Atlantic about it.
Yeah, and we tried to do that a little bit. Dave has done it in some of the things he wrote. In fact, tonight he mentioned two of their names. Heath Freeman, who's the protege of Randall D. Smith, is the founder of Alden. So, I mean, we tried to do some of that, and part of the reason this is so intractable is that, like I said earlier, you know, we're not activists or PR people or whatever, we're journalists. So it's a very fine line to ride between, like, what I wrote or, you know, what this hashtag Alden Exposed. There's a whole website about it, hashtag News Matters. We try to do that in social media and in other things. You know, some of the interviews that were given on the next piece that Kyle ran last
Tuesday after our protest. During the protest, we were chanting names. You may have even mentioned Heath or Randall, but I mean that's part of the reason why it's a sticky, nuanced situation. Is that it's not really our job to do that, and yet our jobs are on the line. So it's sort of a catch-22. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, we are attempting to do that. And their names are Heath Freeman and Randall Smith.
Dave, you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. You're absolutely right. This is the challenge that we face, that people just like you who care about this have not been steeped in this information like we all have for months and years. So just a couple of the quick points that have been brought up. Rocky Mountain News domain name is owned by Phil Anschutz because, the theory goes, he is waiting for the Denver Post to die to start it up again. He has tried to buy the Denver Post. Numerous reports have said he has made repeated attempts to buy the Denver Post from Alden, has failed, and therefore now is holding in reserve the domain name, which is a site that's now used by bots to aggregate news from other places. It's a placeholder so that he can start up a new organization if that becomes necessary. The models that are working with benefactors who are wealthy, and they are numerous. John Henry owns the Boston Red Sox, bought the Boston Globe. He is reinvesting in the Boston Globe as a matter of community journalism, and it's doing well. Glenn Taylor, who owns the Minnesota Timberwolves, bought the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. That used to be a rival with the St. Paul Pioneer Press up there, just like the Rocky and the Denver Post were here. St. Paul Pioneer Press is owned by Alden. It's in exactly the same position as the Post, about 60 journalists. Minneapolis Star-Tribune has 240 journalists in their newsroom. Same market. So it can be done. The problem is, do we have somebody like that who is willing to invest in community journalism in the way they are doing in Minneapolis and Boston? And that's not entirely clear at this point. Yeah?
I have a question for you. It concerns me that billionaires are in control of the news. They don't like to be criticized. It really concerns me that they would not take criticism themselves well. In New York, the papers that are owned by, what's his name?
Murdoch. Right.
You know.
Right. You're
my
right.
son interviewed there.
Right.
They said, "Is it true that you have to write what Murdoch writes?" And he goes, "We're working on it."
Yeah. No. I mean, this is the old model. This is the original model. Before the change, you had, all you got to do is watch Citizen Kane. That's who owned newspapers, right?
Yeah.
Bigger than life. Rich guys who use those newspapers to forward their own interests. There are now two different models. Rupert Murdoch is one. Sheldon Adelson in Las Vegas owns the paper and has banned any coverage of Sheldon Adelson. So self-interest is alive and well. But there are people like John Henry, like Glenn Taylor, like the people in Philadelphia who are investing in community journalism for the good of that journalism and who have not dictated. I don't have any idea. All I'm saying is we don't have any great options. It's easy to find fault with pretty much all the options that are out there. I couldn't agree more that relying on billionaires is not exactly, where I'd like to go. But compared to these guys, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. My name's Dave. I'm the editor at Denverite. I used to work at the Denver Post. I subscribe to the Denver Post now. And I will tell you, once, really early in my career, when I worked at the Boulder Daily Camera, I got laid off. And on the day that I got laid off, I canceled my subscription from inside the building. And it felt great. It was awesome. It was the coolest damn thing I ever did. But, because the guy says, "Are you inside the building right now?" So anyway, I can understand why, if you had just, parted ways with the paper, you'd say, everybody should cancel their subscriptions. I personally think that is a load of shit. I think it is disingenuous. I think it's intellectually dishonest. I think it is disrespectful to people who you used to work with and theoretically used to serve. I think that anybody discouraging people from supporting local journalism in any way is a big problem. I can understand why you might want to, right? If you think that the product has changed, if you are frustrated and you're feeling powerless, you don't know what to do, I can understand that impulse. But I will tell you, I do not work for the Denver Post. Many of my friends who were there then, when I worked there, are not there anymore. Some of my friends still are. There are ways in which you could say that I am competing for the same dollars, and I'm saying to you, I would not cancel my subscription to the Denver Post if I believe in local journalism. There are two reasons for that. One, if I'm paying for the Denver Post, it's because I'm reading the news on the site. They put up a paywall. In order to get that news, you got to pay the money. If you don't do that, you're not going to get that information. Two, if you cancel your subscription, I think it's just going to cause people to lose their jobs faster and faster. I think it's not that hard to make that connection. I would love for somebody to spring up and be the across the street option. But here's what we know, to answer a couple of questions that have gone kind of half-answered. One, where's Phil Anschutz and all this, somebody asked. Well, he's tried to buy it, and we've learned that that is not working right now. What we believe we understand is that he tried to buy it for less than they wanted to sell it for, and they said, no, thank you. And then another time, somebody was here on Tuesday night, and he said he had, or I forget who said, that he had approached him again, and they wouldn't even listen. So there's that. Another question is, what if we got a whole bunch of people who had a little bit of money? A little bit of money being several millions dollars.
50, please. Like John Winston.
Yeah. So, first of all, if any of you all have just a little bit, a couple $1 million, let's talk after this. I got some good ideas. But such groups are making noise. There's a group out of Colorado Springs that said they had $10 million toward buying the Denver Post. Well, wouldn't that be nice? But the thing is, the price that people are talking about that has been reported by a couple of people is $125 million. And that may not be enough. So,
but why not put that toward an alternative approach and start to implement it?
So I can't. I don't have the answer. But if you find yourself 12 people that all have $10 million, let's get moving, right? Let's do it. But
well, we have to find those people.
I'm saying we know where some are. You find the rest. It's a great idea. Okay. So the other thing that I just want to say is I really think that people should keep investing in local journalism. I think that you should decide, and I said this on Twitter the other day, but I don't have any followers. Y'all don't know. So you should decide on what your local journalism budget is. You should decide on that. That should be part of the stuff that you've decided you're going to pay for because you live in this city, you care enough to be here. I couldn't say this to literally every crowd, but I can say it to you. You care enough to be here. You should decide what your budget is. You should be subscribed. If you've already subscribed to the Denver Post, keep subscribing to the Denver Post. And is that all you want to subscribe to? Nobody's stopping you from supporting CPR, Colorado Independent, Chalk Beat. My shop, we're called Denverite. We're pretty good. KUNC has done phenomenal work this year. Who am I forgetting right now who takes donations? KGNU, yes. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and I think that you need to have a robust media diet. I think that you need to have a media budget that doesn't necessarily go all to one place because, we're seeing what kind of the issue is with having exactly one big, strong player, which is that if it gets weakened, we all feel totally imperiled. And we don't know what to do, and we're all here and we're all frustrated, and I can appreciate the frustration. I hear frustration from everybody because you think, I got part of an idea and I want the rest. Well, we're all exactly like that. We've all got part of an idea, and,
Sorry, let's get...
Yeah.
So, Tony, can you just...
My name is Ann Schrader. I worked for the Post for 34 years. I left in 2012 under what I thought was going to be one of the last buyouts, but it was I think the place to start is a community effort, but I'm not sure what it looks like. But I think education has to be part of it. I mean, we can talk about all this crap, and most of it's insider baseball. But Dave is right. People don't know. They don't understand what is going on. I have a friend who's 98 years old, is subscribed since 1950, and she was aware of all the stuff that's been going on in the newspaper business about online taking away revenues. But when I sat down and explained it to her, what was really going on here, it made a big difference. And now she's telling her 70 and 80-year-old friends. So there needs to be an educational effort.
How do we do that?
Well, I don't know, but
that's the problem, right?
but we need to get the word out. So I mean, it's an educational thing, and people can buy in that way.
I'm Tony Mulligan with the Denver Newspaper Guild, and we've been referred to a few times tonight. Officially for the Guild, our position right now is keep your subscription. If you don't subscribe, buy an online subscription. Don't feel you're supporting them by being hit by banner ads online. support it financially. You know, we all agree the problem is these guys are slowly killing this to maintain a very high profit. But the idea of advertiser boycott or the subscription boycott, aren't we just expediting that killing? And you know, at some point they will sell the thing. When the profit margin isn't there, the revenue doesn't support the profit margin, they will leave town, they will be for sale. But in the meantime, maintaining the staffing to where they can maintain the product, maintain the readers, where the community is actually consuming the news, they're not ignorant about the issues. That's an important issue for the union. We want the community to get educated by the great objective reporting that our people put out. You know, the solution we've identified, the best solution would be that there's a buyer, whether it's a Glenn Taylor or a group of community people. Maybe it's $100 from you know, a few million people. Whatever the scenario is, coming up with the buyer. Eventually these guys will put it up for sale. And it's not just about the Denver Post, it's about all 14 papers. You know, we're talking solution for Denver. There's more likely to be a viable online option. We already have Denverite and a few others that can fill some of the void. But when you hit Longmont, Loveland, Fort Morgan, Sterling, Estes Park, Canyon City especially, we're not talking about an option there. So a buyer for the cluster is the right solution. I feel that, you know, the Guild has been pushing the message, we need a new owner, for 4 years now. It's finally hit the limelight after Chuck became superhero. But this isn't a new campaign for the union. We are fighting for the jobs, you know, for the maintenance of the careers at the paper, but also for the community and for the health of the community. Without the newspaper, without that foundation of the objective newspaper, the discourse is awful. It's getting worse already. And people are ignorant and make bad choices based on misinformation or no information.
Tony, can I ask you a question? So let's say that people followed your advice and everybody who now subscribes to the Denver Post continues to, and everybody who advertises in the Denver Post continues to. That means that the revenue that Alden gets continues to be exactly the same. Which means, why would they eventually sell the Denver Post?
Because they're just going to keep cutting.
Well, that means, so yeah, but if they keep cutting, that means that people will stop buying it. People will stop advertising it. So that's the point that I'm making, that you seem to be not understanding, is if in fact they're only going to be able to sell it after they've cut it till there's nothing there, then there's nothing upon which to build. So the idea is to try to force them to sell the paper before there is nothing left. Because as a lot of people have said in here, getting people to subscribe and then come back is very difficult to do. Unsubscribe and then come back. We want to be in a position of saying, if you unsubscribe, we are going to make a difference and then you can come back. That's part of the deal. We're asking people, I mean, I'm not asking anybody to unsubscribe. I have unsubscribed and it broke my heart to do it. I subscribed to, I think, 7 newspapers. I've never not subscribed to a paper in a place in which I live. It broke my heart to do it. And, but I feel that if there's a community effort towards saying, we're doing these things only to force you to sell, and that we as a community are doing this so we can have something that we can subscribe to and something we can support. That's my idea. I'm not saying it would work. I have no idea.
Mike?
I'm not an expert in these things. What I'm saying is I continue not to hear a better plan.
Mike, I agree that what you're saying is that we need to have something in place, but the fact of the matter is that even if everybody kept subscribing, even if that subscriber money was still coming in, even if advertising money, there's going to be decline in revenue. I mean, what? That's the reality of the news business. Look at the Salt Lake Tribune. And I mean, the Salt Lake Tribune announced last week they're cutting 1/3 of their staff. They're not owned by a hedge fund. They were bought by a billionaire who was going in to do all this. Yeah. They're cutting 1/3 of their staff because their ad revenue is down 40%.
Absolutely.
So how can you? I mean, so to say, okay, everybody's staying, it's not going to stay at 28 million.
No, I know it's not going to stay that. I'm suggesting that if the plan If that's the plan.
There is no plan.
This is what Tony
We
just
need
said the
time
plan
to
should be.
come up with a plan.
Yeah, but Tony just said the plan should be everyone to continue to subscribe, everyone to continue to advertise, and if that in fact happens, then nothing will change. I'm saying that unless you change the model without people doing this in the way that it's going to eventually happen anyway, if you get ahead of that, then that's how you save the newspaper. If you wait until that's done, there's nothing to save. That's the point that I'm making.
Right, but like for all these metaphors, and I'll just
There's no metaphor in that speech.
No, I know. But I mean other metaphors. Like think of it possibly like, and again, this is not a black and white, either or light switch kind of thing. It's got some nuance. But you know, if the Denver Post is a sick person on life support or dying, you don't like the hospital they're in, you don't agree with the doctors, you don't agree with their care, you don't pull the plug on that person.
That's not the proposal, though. Can I just clarify, please? The proposal is not that everybody stop subscribing right now. If you want to see the argument that I tried to make, you can look it up on boulderfreepress.blog. The proposal is that people commit to abandon the Post if and when the union organizers decide the situation is hopeless. But in the meantime, what you do, and this is a long-time Guild tactic that we've used for decades, you get people to sign pledge cards. And that's both advertisers and subscribers saying, if and when the union decides we got no hope, then they will send all of these cancellations into the paper. What that gives you is some leverage. You then go to Digital First Media and say, we have these advertisers and this many thousands of subscribers ready to abandon you, but they are not abandoning you right now. We have this as leverage. So please, let's sit down at the table and talk. Let's get a better management than 20% profits off the top. It is a threat. It is a leverage point. It is not a campaign to convince everybody to drop their subscriptions right now.
Can I expand on that?
Yeah, sure.
I was going to point out that Dave's plan never was quit the paper now. It's a pledge campaign. And we have done those pledge campaigns when there's a clear demand that can be answered by the employer. It was over raises, it's over benefits, and we've done them for years here in Denver.
Right.
The difference here is we don't have a buyer. I need two people for the transaction. We don't have a motivated seller, and we don't have a buyer lined up. So that's been the obstacle. Is the Guild has talked about the pledge campaign for a couple of years now, but it's what's our clear demand that can be fulfilled by the current owner. Right now, selling it isn't. Dave and I have talked, and he's got some demands short of sell. It's publicly put up that you are willing to entertain offers for the paper. So there could be nuances that could be considered. In the pledge campaign, you're not immediately harming the economics of the paper. And back to the question about, well, why would they sell eventually? And Linda answers it. They're working on the curve. They're working on the fact that people are retaining it as they raise the prices, and that's not sustainable. It's going to go down. Newsprint's going up 25% because of the tariffs. There's just the normal evolution to online.
No, I understand.
So, it is going to happen slowly. We're saying don't expedite it. Let's figure out a way to find, we have the problem. What's the solution? It's a new buyer. How do we achieve that? And it's going to take somebody willing to buy it, and it's the pressure on these guys or the loss of profits to motivate them to do it.
And again, I think everyone has to recognize the Denver Post may not be savable because they may not sell. And so even as you work towards trying to buy it, be prepared to start something else. The most optimistic thing I've heard is that they're making 20%. If you had an owner willing to make 5%, you could have a viable newspaper. You don't think so? A daily?
I think it's naive to think that anybody could start up a print paper and compete with these guys. It would be a disaster.
If you're prepared to compete, I would argue as someone who started a newspaper, it's not impossible. You've got to be prepared though, but you have to have business people in the room who are willing to buy ads, and those are the people who are not in the conversation.
But Tony, I would put it another way. So, I mean, I don't think that it's viable to have two things at once. I don't believe
But
that's
it'll be
possible.
gone.
Yeah, if it's gone, it's a different thing. But the question of a buyer, right? So there needs to be a buyer, but can we put everything on hold until there is a buyer, kid? Wouldn't we first have to be able to say Alden is saying the thing is for sale? If Alden says it's for sale, wouldn't that bring buyers to the fore rather than say, look, Alden is wants to charge you something impossible for you to do and still make a profit? What business person is going to say, yeah, I'll work on that and I'll negotiate my way through that? Aren't they going to say, if we could, the union, and I think that's a great way to do it, if the union could get enough people in the community and in the business world to put pressure on Alden so that they would say, yeah, we're willing to negotiate a more reasonable price, or you're going to lose all these advertisers and lose all these subscribers, wouldn't then owners be more likely to come forward rather than say, I've got to put up $125 million, meaning I will lose money for the rest of my life?
Mike, can I ask you a question about technically? So it sounds like we're talking about a plan, fleshing it out, having some ideas about it. What indications do we have whether or not Alden would allow an ad campaign in the paper asking people to sign those pledges? And if not, how would you intend to reach those people? And just quickly...
We expect you to do it, right?
That's what I'm about to say. Based on my limited outreach to people, talking to roughly 60,000 people a night on Next, I have been... And you can say that I'm a really shitty messenger for the Post. I would also argue at this point the Post probably shouldn't be shooting any messengers. But the response that I received from the TV pleas that we did to support the Post was astonishingly discouraging.
So Chuck, I know you said you were going to say about what Tony's saying.
What Tony's saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm just being optimistic, possibly naive, but I keep coming back to this idea that the guild officers are protected legally from engaging in these kinds of actions. They have the muscle, they have the network. Why can't you hit them across all of their holdings all at once? Why does that not work? Even if you don't have buyers stepping forward in these cities, even if you don't have a known buyer in Colorado, why don't you just hit them really hard across their entire holdings and say, look, man, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. We're taking all our advertising money with us until you either reform or until you sell us piecemeal to all the people that hopefully would step forward and see the chance to make some money. You guys are here for a reason. You believe in local journalism. I think that one of the reasons that our country is in such a bad state of affairs is because it's the big coastal papers that are making money, but it's the small papers, and it's the regional papers, and it's the state papers that are getting hurt. And you use that as a rallying cry. You say, look, this is good for communities all across the United States. It's good for America as a country. And you take the high road. You take the journalistic principles of the high road. And it's a little bit of a damn the torpedoes kind of a thing. I get it. But you hit them that way, and that's going to get their attention. If suddenly, their dozens and dozens of papers don't have their 25 biggest advertisers anymore, how do they not get the message? And I know Tony has a very good answer to that. Tony's a smart guy. But I'm like the editor right now. I'm like the Greg Moore who says, I want to do an investigative package on X. And the reporters and the editors all go, oh shit, Greg Moore wants us to do that. That's really hard. How are we going to figure that out? And so we start making calls and everything. We come back to Greg, oh, Greg, it's not going to work because of this reason and this reason and this reason. And Greg says, who? I want you to do a story about X. Figure it out.
Specifically on the advertising boycott, I hear there's a couple of advertisers that were interested, but historically, I know Dave Singleton said that we brought him to his knees and he signed a contract because of an advertising boycott. Dave, Ann, correct me if I'm wrong, we never got an advertiser to boycott. We harassed them. We leafleted in front of their stores and we made them angry and they called Dean and bitched about it. And he got tired of Jake Japs and John Elway and the Gart brothers yelling at him, and that's how we got the agreement. They never pulled their ass. They're not a natural ally. It'd be great if we could get them, and that folks have said that would be the most effective economic impact if we could get large advertisers to pledge to pull their ads or pull their ads. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think it's doable from the union standpoint. We haven't been successful in the past in pulling that off.
But I think there's never been a position like this where you can speak to the advertiser's self-interest in the peril that they face if these few people are left who believe that advertising in a newspaper is one of the best ways to sell their product, and there aren't many left who believe that. But for those few who do believe that, they have a self-interest in having a newspaper going forward. And if we're told by the people who know this stuff, and you know this better than I do certainly, that the plan is to bleed the paper until it basically is dead. If that is the plan, if they can do something to change that plan, that's in their self-interest. And the self-interest is the only way, I believe, to possibly move those guys. But there seems to be a way that there is self-interest.
Can I say something?
Where? Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. I think you guys have a very valuable momentum, the gentleman on the panel and also the TV reporter. I'm sorry about your day. But getting a public message together, getting it out there, uniting.
Becoming effective on communicating to the public. I'm a blue-collar guy. I'm not in the news business. I'm from the outside, and I'm telling you, I'm hearing from me sitting here, I'm hearing a lot of negative, very few positives. I'm not hearing any traction with any good ideas. But my partner works for the Denver Post. She's in the union, she's very active, and I feel like you guys are not tapping into the potential that you have out there right now. The time is right now. Now is your opportunity. There's so many people that have come up to us, strangers, and they're like, oh, you work at the Post, I've heard what's happening, what can we do to be involved? And all we can tell them is like, stay subscribed. That's all that we can tell them. And it's almost like you're deflating the thing. It's as if like your quarterback for your team is hurt right now, and everybody's like, can I just suit up and get in there and just be your quarterback right now? No, please just subscribe and just, just keep rooting for the team. We'll figure it out. People want to get involved. She is a former director of nonviolence activism from San Francisco. Okay? This is an untapped
valuable potential here. What you guys need to do
is come together with a open, active forum, like a forum's how people have hobbies and get together and have message boards. You have a message board where you have like but you have to get it online. You'd be unbelievable. You'd be amazed how many people can get involved compared to a small physical room. If you have a forum where it's like, we need people who have expertise in hedge funds. Can we get people that are interested in this and that are lawyers? Do we have people that are activists, that are media people, PR? You guys need to sell yourselves to the public. Because right now, I hear an echo chamber. I hear infighting. I hear finger pointing. I don't hear a unified message of getting traction and getting that out to the public. I hear very few on the outside looking in, other than what I see maybe on Westward on my Facebook feed. That's all I got. Thank you.
I don't understand why it has to be only the union that does this.
It doesn't have to be.
All these people who showed up, what's the ask? What are you asking these people to do for you? Can we take, I want to buy a mattress. Do I go to the mattress company and say, I'll buy this mattress, but I need you to send the Post this letter? And I got a letter handed, ready to hand to them.
And there's plenty of
ask us to do something.
There's plenty of from the union, they just don't gain traction, especially with print subscribers. The majority of the revenue is print subscribers. Out online, there's 2 petitions that you can sign. There's plenty of activity out. Go to dfmworkers.org and you'll find 2 years worth of efforts to engage the community, educate the community.
Is the
So the
petition
online
here?
efforts are happening. It's just how do we penetrate and get the general community to understand?
But yes, you're right. And it's one of the ideas that I had when we first started talking about this, when Mike called me on Saturday morning, and we got through making jokes about whether I was a superhero or not. It doesn't just have to be the guild. It can be the community. Yeah, as Tony says, it probably has to be. Where is the Me Too movement for local journalism? Where is the Enough movement for local journalism? Where is the big groundswell across the country, not in New York, not in Washington, not in LA, but in Denver and St. Paul and all the communities that make this country great, right? That's what we need. We need it online. We need something organized from people all around, and they can get behind this idea to shame the advertisers into shutting down until something changes. Whether that's reform at Alden Global Capital, or whether that's Alden says, okay, screw it, we'll sell it to somebody, we'll sell it to whoever else wants to take this battle from here. We've made enough money, thank you very much.
Yeah. What has been the response from non-Alden papers in Colorado in terms of support for maintaining local journalism? Dave, you raised an interesting point. It's not just the post, it's the camera, it's Estes, it's all the medium, the smaller sized dailies that are next in the target lines for these hedge fund vampires. And what I'm wondering is there any way to generate some kind of PR campaign about not just what local journalism is, but what the community will lose? I mean, the Colorado Independent is great, February is great, but your websites, grandmothers don't put digital photos of their kids taken off of websites on the refrigerator, or they don't go to the websites to look for what community events are going on. Those are going to be lost if smaller papers go. And if the Post goes, Kyle, you said that the only thing people in Denver would rally around would be the Broncos. What happens if they lose Bronco coverage?
The Broncos are their own coverage.
Yeah, they will never.
They have their own coverage. So I mean, part of the problem is this, and the young man back there is absolutely right. I mean, but the answer cannot come from the employees of the newspaper. You can't expect the employees of the newspaper to go and bargain with Alden. They tried to get there, and they didn't even get let in the building. So you can't. I mean, what is required is there's 2.5, 3 million people, 4 million people in this greater area here that are affected, and it's not just the people up here on this panel, but the people who work in the newsrooms. I mean, there's tons of expertise out there, and what has to be shown is for a buyer to come forward, I believe. For a buyer to come forward, there has to be shown that there is strong support from within the community for something to have to happen.
But how do you build that support?
Well, I think
most people these days don't know how newspapers work. I mean, we've given up. Back in the good old days of newspapers, every couple of years you would run a special section on this is what goes on behind the scenes at a newspaper. That was designed to show the community what the hell it was we actually did when we put the product out.
Right. But if
we can put something out like that, along with a pledge card to subscribers and advertisers saying, if you believe in strong local community journalism, sign this pledge.
We've learned way over time.
If you did it all in one day across the state, maybe get all of the other media outlets in the state to do the same thing, that might actually kick somebody in the ass and say, hey, they are serious about it.
Well, just to answer your question about other papers, a lot of other reporters, my colleagues in Digital First Media, in other cities, not just along the Front Range and in smaller counties, we think very like-mindedly, is what I've seen, is my impression.
you know, people from the Loveland Reporter Herald, people from Daily Camera, people from the, you know, from out of state digital first papers. I think we're all behind this. And the last thing I'll say is, I think what we did last week, the protest, we did Tuesday, the piece I wrote, I don't mean to keep coming back to that, but it's just an example. I'm not trying to be self-aggrandizing. I don't think I'm more important than any of our readers.
My comment was much better.
We're only as good as we are accurate and responsible to our readers. But I think that was a start. I think that was us setting, you know, a template or a stage. And I think your point, sorry I can't see you, but about, well, and also the guy behind you, you know, about the infighting, the negativity. I mean, I agree. And Kyle, I think on the Tuesday panel, said something that we need to, you know, come together in a way. So I don't mean to be attacking Krieger personally or Mike personally. I'm just.
No, you are.
Well, I'm just frustrated. You know, I mean, I've been getting lectured for years about why the Post sucks. It's my fault that it sucks. It's journalists' fault that it sucks. You know, maybe well, not from you, but maybe to some extent it is about the innovation, the 90s, the internet, yada yada. But this is a very clear case of Alden. So I think, just in closing, I think we are trying to set a template for this and show. But then once we do that, like Mike said, we got to kind of like push it out to sea because we're not activists, we're journalists, and we'll lose our credibility.
You gotta quit hiding behind that. You got it.
But it's true. I can't sit on a board. I can't put a bumper sticker on my car about a political party because I'm not a journalist if I do that. That's not objective.
It's critical, though. The community needs to know why it matters.
Right.
But and Dave tried that, and I tried that, and we don't have a job in journalism.
Yeah, guys, what's the DFM workers website? That's where that shit is.
This is a 60 Minutes story. What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be nice. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so what Tony can
we need somebody like you to pitch it.
Yeah. All right, can I make my little pitch? Yeah.
You make your pitch, yes.
All right, so I said this the last time, and just for continuity's sake, I'll say it again.
Because there was demand for this. Go ahead.
People have been sending me emails all day. As an editor, I know what it's like to tell reporters to do something hard. As a reporter, I know what it's like to do something hard. You have to keep knocking on door after door after door. You have to keep like looking at spreadsheet after spreadsheet, looking at document after document, and hitting a bunch of dead ends. And it's easy to get discouraged. You guys have come out on a work night. You've sat through a long meeting. Public meetings are hell. I can never imagine why anyone wants to go to one. And it's because you care about what's going on. It's because you believe passionately that something is wrong here, and you're right. But it's easy to lose sight. It's easy to get discouraged, and you hear all these things, and there's too much nuance, and there's too much complication, and it's easy just to go home and say, oh, screw it, I'm not going to worry about it anymore. But hopefully, in your lighter moments, when you're shaving, or when you're driving, or you're showering, or whatever it is, when those big aha moments come, that's what you got to depend on, and just don't give up. What you're fighting for is good, and, you know, don't let the vultures get you down.
And I'd say, I've written often about this, and national people are starting to write about this, and more will write about this, but then they'll stop writing about this. So the idea that is going to be the impetus that moves something towards the end, I think is naive. Sorry. But because people are going to stop writing about issues, they stop writing about every issue, and they move on to another issue. So what has to happen is from the community. It has to be from the community. There are lots of people with plenty of expertise in all of these areas in the community. I can tell you who they are. I have long lists of people who formerly worked for the Denver Post, who formerly worked for the Rocky Mountain News, who know just as much about journalism as we do, or more. And there are lots of people out there in the community who need to, if they want to save the Denver Post, if they want to save journalism in Denver and Colorado, they have to come together. It's not going to be me or anybody up here shouting at Alden that's going to make a difference. It has to be the fact that there are you guys out there doing it.
Good.
So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks to the All-Star panel. And It's been a really good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've never used it. Thanks for coming back.
What did you think? It seemed like the vibe sounded downtrodden.
Yeah, it's really down and like, there's some like the situation. Everything that's happening in these times